Greetings and welcome back to my Game Talks. Today I will be talking about another game being produced on the basis of the Kickstarter project model. Now, I had talked about Project Eternity by Obsidian previously, and this particular title I'm going to be talking about is called The Tides of Numera, specifically Torment, Tides of Numera. Whereas Project Eternity is seen, at least on the part of Obsidian, I'm basing it, my assessment there on their words, as a spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate. Tides of Numera, on the other hand, is much more of a spiritual successor to the game Torment, and it's being produced by, or rather made by, inXile Entertainment. Now, Tides of Numera did not just come out of the blue, out of thin air. Tides of Numera is actually a tabletop RPG, or was originally, and still is, I believe still exists, developed and written by Monte Cook. Monte Cook, for the D&D aficionados, must be familiar. He spent years and years working for Wizards of the Coast on Dungeons & Dragons products, and he essentially was the harbinger, the creator, and the maker of the Planescape setting, i.e. without him there would have never been a Planescape Torment, or a Planescape setting in the traditional role-playing sense either. And I have to say that was one of my favorite settings in the history of Dungeons & Dragons. And of course, many of you remember, the older folk amongst you, the old fogies, that Torment was just a fantastic game. It just had certain elements of story that you just don't see in games these days. And that's not just me being nostalgic. So Tides of Numera is set in this world that is essentially the Earth in the far, far distant future. And it's been ravaged, this Earth has been ravaged by so many disasters, catastrophes, cataclysms, over and over again, to the point where it's not even recognizable very much as Earth. And there's an entire lore that's sort of spun up or come to being based on this. The different ages. The game is set in the 9th age, and presumably eight ages, each age meeting its end by way of a catastrophe. And it's kind of a mixture of fantasy, medieval-esque, tech, punk, magic, a kind of a mix of everything. It's hard to place, and I think that makes for a really interesting setting. Tides of Numera, as I said, is going to be a spiritual successor to Torment. It has the title Torment in it, Torment, Tides of Numera. And in that sense, it's going to be much more story-driven than it is about the combat. I think, whilst I'm looking forward to both games a great deal, the Eternity Project as well, or Project Eternity rather, as Torment, Tides of Numera, Project Eternity, I think, will be just as mechanics fixated as maybe Baldur's Gate was. You have the story, and you also have the combat mechanics, maybe with the classical elements to them, role-playing elements. Tides of Numera, on the other hand, as they themselves state, what can one life matter? The fundamental question, at least on the part of the developers who've revealed various details of the game, is what does one life matter in the grand scheme of things? So the story is not about saving the world or the universe, not about some epic event, but it tracks the course of one individual, male or female, throughout the game in making decisions, and how those decisions have an effect on the individual, the companions of the individual, and the immediate environment, and perhaps the greater environment as well. But that fundamental question, which I think is an interesting question, of course, in and of itself, philosophically speaking, it's a question that human beings have posed themselves since the dawn of humanity, since human beings could think, what can one life matter in the grand scheme of things? Well, in this game, my strong suspicion is that one life will matter, and that your decisions and the choices you make will have a tremendous effect on the world that you inhabit, this world of Numera. And keeping in tradition with Torment you will have some very interesting companions. It's going to be incredibly dialogue laden. I suspect it's not going to be voiced, which is actually a good thing. It would be impossible to load the game up with the amount of dialogue that I suspect it would have or will have. And there will be combat mechanics, but that's not going to be the main focus of the game. That's secondary. Whereas I think with Project Eternity, it's much more of a mix. And it is more about the traditional kind of save the world kind of thing, or at least confront some kind of great evil. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I loved about Torment, and spoilers here, the old Torment game, was the journey of the Nameless One. The journey of the Nameless One, that game really is about the Nameless One, how he got where he was going, how he ended up being what he was, and how he might redeem himself. Although, to be honest, I wasn't too thrilled with the ending of Torment back in the day, but there seems to be some path of redemption. But Gone shall be, say, classical Dungeons & Dragons alignment. There will be a different system implemented that does take into account the weight of your decisions, but I don't think it's going to be gauged specifically along ethical lines. And so it should make for very interesting role-playing. So this is going to be an intense role-playing game. People who are only interested in action and just combat mechanics, I probably would advise them to steer away from this. And immensely popular. The game is, as I said, being produced by In Exile Entertainment, and apparently they've now exceeded the amount of donations that Obsidian has for Project Eternity. They're by several tens of thousands. So there's a tremendous PC player-backed interest in this game, and I think it would behoove everyone who's interested in this sort of game, who had played Torment, the story-driven elements, and enjoyed the story-driven elements of Torment, to have a peek at this game. Maybe you want to donate, maybe not, but in any event, have a look at it, read up on it, read up on the world of Numera. Like I said, it is a distant future Earth that is really unrecognizable to us or to any contemporaries. And the fact that Monty Cook, a fantastic fantasy writer who created the entire Planescape series, as well as he just wrote so much for Dungeons & Dragons until he parted away from with Wizards of the Coast. That is really, really, really inspirational, the fact that he's the lead writer for it. So I think we can expect some great stuff from this game. The art looks really great. It's just what you would expect from an unrecognizable an Earth so far removed in the future that has undergone so much catastrophe and cataclysm that it isn't the Earth we know and probably never will be. And it is so rare to find a game where that fundamental question is posed: what does one life matter in the scheme of things? The personal journey, without the extra focus on equipment, leveling up. Yeah, that exists. That's there in the game, but that's not the main point. I think there's so many games out there that that kind of almost disallow you to really focus in on the story because you're too busy leveling up your gear, crafting. And I love that. That's what Skyrim is for me. Leveling up gear, crafting, finding items, armor, looks great, fantastic. But the personalized aspect of things is often lost. Even in a game like Dragon Age Origins, it's also about the combat. It's also about, and that's great. I love that aspect. But a game that specializes in the story of an individual and a myriad of choices and just boundless dialogue that you can really just lose yourself in, that has not existed since Torment, and I'm very much looking forward to this game. When I'm going to play it, I have no idea. The developers have said that it will be released most likely sometime in 2015, so it's still a fair bit off time-wise, but nonetheless, something to look forward to, especially for hardcore RPG aficionados. If you'd play Dungeons and Dragons, this game, or Planescape in particular, this game, I'd probably venture to guess, is almost certainly for you. Go ahead, I'll be posting some links. Check it out, read up on it. Really, really interesting. All about the individual journey and how you develop as an individual, and what the effects of your decisions are on the immediate environment and those you interact with. So all about you. And that's just rare. It's such a rare gem these days. So check it out. Thanks for watching. And as always, may the gods watch over you. Take care. Bye-bye.